joined now by the Policing Minister, Chris Philp, who's just come in. Good morning to you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Good morning.
I want to ask you a couple of questions about policing, because yesterday there were a couple of bits of news concerning the Met Police. The first, that 3 Met Police officers are facing allegations of gross misconduct after the strip search of a 15-year-old schoolgirl. We also saw the Met Police paying out compensation and apologising to 2 women who were arrested at the vigil for Sarah Everard, who was, of course, the young woman who was killed by a serving Met Police officer. Are you shocked by the police's behaviour in these instances?
Well, I think behaviour like that you've just described, the incident was child Q, of course, is unacceptable. We can't have people being treated in the way that child Q was. It's critical that where there are officers serving, in the Met or anywhere else, whose conduct doesn't come up to the required standard, it's right that that gets looked at properly and, if appropriate, they get removed. The government changed the rules. In fact, I was sitting on this sofa probably about 2 weeks ago explaining how we're changing the rules to make it easier and faster for chief constables and chief officers to dismiss officers who shouldn't be wearing the badge, carrying the badge or wearing the uniform. It's worth bearing in mind, or keeping in mind, of course, that the vast majority of police officers are brave and dedicated and hard-working. But for that small minority who let the side down, and let the public down, more importantly, action does need to be taken, and that's why we're giving chief constables these stronger powers. I think Mark Rowley, the Met Commissioner, is taking very strong action to sort out the historic misconduct issues in the Met, and I've got confidence in the programme of work that he's carrying out.
One of the 2 women who was arrested at the Sarah Everard vigil, who's been apologised to and given a payout to, has called for the Met Police to be abolished.
Well, I don't agree with that. I think I'm a London MP. I think it's important that we keep Londoners safe, and that is the Metropolitan Police's job. I've got confidence in Mark Rowley's turnaround plan for them. I was at a meeting yesterday with him and the Mayor of London. The Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, of course, is responsible for overseeing the Met politically. I think the turnaround plan is so far making progress, and I don't think disbanding the Met would help Londoners.
OK, let's move on to other issues, because there are reports today that the Prime Minister and the Chancellor are considering scaling back HS2. Is the government committed to extending HS2 to Manchester?
Well, we're working on building HS2 at the moment. There are spades in the ground, there's track being laid, tunnels are being tunnelled underneath various bits of the track on the route. That work is underway. The government does from time to time consider the phasing of projects, but that's just a general comment. I don't know anything about the specifics of this. I'm a Home Office Minister, so I'm afraid I don't know about exactly what is or is not being considered, but I do know that work is ongoing as we speak to construct the line.
But you're here to represent the government. You can't say that the government is committed to extending the line to Manchester as planned.
Well, I can tell you that work on the line is ongoing at the moment. It is being built, and, those trains are going to go very fast, from London going north as soon as the line is finished.
You can see that there's a possibility that it won't go to Manchester?
Well, they look at phasing occasionally, but I don't know, to be honest. As a Home Office Minister, I don't know exactly what they're looking at. You need to talk to the Treasury or the Department for Transport. What I do know is that work on constructing HS2 is going on at the moment.
The Mayor of Manchester, Andy Burnham, has tweeted about this. He doesn't seem terribly happy. One of the things he said is that the southern half of England gets a modern railway system and the north is left with Victorian infrastructure. He asks in colourful language, what's happened to levelling up?
Well, there's billions of pounds. I think it's £3 billion this year being invested in levelling up in the north. There are new rail projects, more local rail projects being invested in the north, road infrastructure. The government is, moving departments up into the north, so moving civil servants, government departments. So the levelling up agenda is steaming ahead. As I say, £3 billion of capital investment going into helping the north.
OK, well, so many issues to talk about today. I'm going to move on to something else, because Rishi Sunak stood in front of a sign saying "Stop the boats" earlier this year, and yet we've had 23,000 crossings so far. The backlog in the meantime is at record levels, and the Rwanda policy potentially may never happen. So what would you give the chances of Rishi Sunak meeting that target of stopping the boats? Well,
let's start with the small boats. So the number this year compared to last year, the same time last year, is around about 20% down. Now, we'd like to go a lot further, obviously, but it's a good start that we've got those numbers down by 20% year on year at a time when in Europe, the numbers are going up. In Europe, the illegal arrivals, illegal immigration into Europe is up by 20%. Here in the UK, we've got it, up by 30% in Europe. Here in the UK, we've got it down by 20. So that is a good start. By no means the job is complete, but it's a good start at least.
Will he meet his pledge?
And, well, I'm confident in the fullness of time, yes, we will stop those boats. We must stop those boats. They're illegal crossings of the Channel. They're dangerous. They're also unnecessary because France is a safe country. It's not a war zone. By contrast, we see Labour proposing this open-door policy, doing a deal with the European Union that would see 100,000 of Europe's illegal immigrants being shipped over to the UK, and I don't think bringing over 100,000 or more of Europe's illegal immigrants over here is what the British public want to see. We don't want Keir Starmer's open-door policy.
They say that number is nonsense, and they say the fact the government is putting that number out is embarrassing. They're talking about a tailor-made deal, and isn't a deal, a returns deal, exactly what Rishi Sunak was seeking with the EU. Just last month, Downing Street said the Prime Minister remained open to taking forward negotiations on an UK-EU returns deal, but the EU rebuffed him.
Not with quotas in the way that Keir Starmer is proposing. And if you look at the...
hang on. We don't know the details of what he's proposing.
If you look at the returns agreements we have got, with Albania, for example, about a year ago, we entered into a returns agreement with Albania. So when people from Albania cross the Channel, they can be returned quickly back to their home country. And as a result of doing that, it has reduced Albanian arrivals by 90% in the last year. When Australia did something similar about 8-9 years ago, Operation Sovereign Borders, it cut their illegal arrivals by sea down to zero. We've got to deal with Rwanda. We're hopeful, I'm expecting that will get approved by the Supreme Court, and that will provide a huge deterrent effect, because why would you cross the Channel if you're going to end up going to Rwanda? We've seen the deterrent effect working with the Albania deal. We've seen it work in Australia 8 or 9 years ago. And yet, Keir Starmer proposes to scrap the Rwanda deal, even though we can see that it's going to work.
Well, we don't know yet whether it will work or not.
I've given you two compelling case studies.
Let me just put one other point to you, because Labour is also promising to end the use of hotels for asylum seekers if they got into power and help clear the backlog of cases. Labour has a point, doesn't it, that it would save a lot of money if we actually processed these people rather than keeping in this accommodation.
Well, where are they going to put the 100,000 people they intend to ship over from Europe under their plan that Keir Starmer announced? I mean, that's going to make the hotel problem worse, not better.
100,000 people.
Well, if you look at the way the proposed European asylum scheme works, the UK's share of that would be about 13%. And last year they had around about 1 million asylum applications in Europe. So you can see where the 100,000 comes from. It's pretty clear. And where would, if Labour did bring across 100,000 people from Europe, where would they go? They'd end up in hotels. Look, the way to end the use of hotels is to stop the boats. We're down 20%. We need to go further. The Rwanda deal will help stop the boats. And on the asylum backlog, the Immigration Minister has doubled the number of decision makers, and the Home Secretary doubled the number of decision makers. It's up to about 2,500 now. That's double compared to last year. And we're on track by December of this year to get the legacy cases, the cases that date back from June last year or before, down to zero. So, I mean, more work to do, but there is good progress being made.
OK, Chris Philp, we appreciate your time. Thanks very much indeed for coming in.